Tonight, the ethics investigation into Donald Trump's pick to run the Justice Department.
The resignation of Gaetz at the last minute was clearly designed to stop the public release of this information.
Where things stand as House lawmakers debate what to do with the findings of their report. Plus,
because the Russians have been so unsuccessful in the way that they have been fighting, they've kind of changed their tactics a bit.
how the Biden administration is changing strategy to aid Ukraine against Russia's invasion. And a look at how homegrown opposition forces are rising up against the Iranian regime. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. With the transgender, it's an issue.
The battle over confirming Trump's cabinet picks heats up on Capitol Hill. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. All eyes on Capitol Hill, where the House Ethics Committee has yet to decide if it will release a report into sexual misconduct allegations against Matt Gaetz.
President-elect Trump nominated Gaetz to serve as U.S. Attorney General, firmly standing by his pick despite backlash. A lawyer for two women say they told the committee Gaetz paid them for sex, and one of them said she saw Gaetz having sex with a 17-year-old minor. Now, new allegations surfacing of 27 Venmo payments from Gaetz to the women. The attorney says some of that money was for sex. Former Congressman Gaetz denies all charges while pointing to a Justice Department investigation that resulted in no charges against him. GOP senators say this will all come out at the confirmation hearings.
He will be held to account in the confirmation process. He deserves a chance to make his argument why he should be Attorney General.
Every nominee, whether they are Biden's in the last administration or whether they are President Trump, deserve a process.
Vice President-elect J.D. Vance showed up on Capitol Hill today lobbying Republican senators to rally behind Gaetz and Pete Hegseth, Trump's nominee for Defense Secretary. Hegseth is accused of a sexual assault from back in 2017, though no charges were filed.
CBN's White House correspondent Kelly Wright has been following the story throughout the day.
He joins us now from the White House. Kelly, let's start with the House Ethics Committee that Matt Gaetz report. Where do things stand right now, and what are we anticipating might happen next?
Well, let's start right there, as you stated. That House committee has now adjourned for the day without giving any information from this closed-door meeting. They were very tight-lipped about it. They are looking at it. As you know, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has stated that he would like to keep a lid on this and not release it since Mr. Gaetz is no longer a member of Congress. So it remains to be seen if the House Ethics Committee will go ahead to vote in releasing this information to the public and, of course, passing it on to the Senate for confirmation hearings that will come in January for Matt Gaetz. John?
Hey, Kelly, we know some of the senators are calling on the White House, on the House Ethics Committee to release the report. With the details that came out today, how do you expect the information to impact the Senate vote to confirm Gaetz?
It remains to be seen. Senator John Cornyn, as you know, is trying to look for the information because he thinks that's important. We heard from Senator Lindsey Graham, as you just played there, that Matt Gaetz deserves a fair chance. Senator Josh Hawley saying the same thing, that Matt Gaetz deserves a fair opportunity to state his case. We do know that the Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has been on Capitol Hill meeting with members of the Senate, as well as Matt Gaetz himself talking and arguing his case for becoming the next Attorney General, which people will be watching very closely to see if this will happen and if this is the right choice for President-elect Donald Trump, who remains behind his man.
You're right. A lot of people will be watching. Kelly, I want to ask you about another new Trump appointment. He named Linda McMahon as his pick for the Education Department. She, of course, served as his small business administrator in the first Trump term. What do we know about her experience in education and what Trump might expect from her in that role?
Here's what he's expecting, and he stated it very clearly, that he is expecting her to help America's education system become #1 in the world. And he cites that her long business record and her service to this country as head of the Small Business Administration and her activities, her proactivity with education in the state of Connecticut will definitely help her in terms of strong school choice. And as you know, the president-elect has stated that he wants to disband the Department of Education and return education to the states to effectively manage and run education as he sees it, being better for the students and the parents of America.
Kelly, is that something that he can do, dismantle the education department without having a Secretary of Education?
I think it's going to be something that many people will be watching to see how the president-elect's agenda really shapes out, taking shape and form after January, after he's sworn in, and seeing if these particular people will be nominated and confirmed to actually carry out his agenda. He's a disruptor. We're going to wait and see to watch out what kind of disruption will come to even education, as well as the Attorney General's role in the Department of Justice and its agencies. So much that people are watching to see what this president will do. Remember, he was elected to implement disruption. That's what he appears to be seeking to do.
Yeah, the word of the day. All right, senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Well, a recount is underway in Pennsylvania's tight Senate race. Republicans are hoping to flip the seat after seizing control of the Senate. GOP challenger Dave McCormick has a slight lead over Democrat incumbent Bob Casey. And on November 7th, the Associated Press called the race for McCormick, but a mandatory recount was triggered when vote totals showed the candidates within a margin of a percentage point. On Monday, Pennsylvania's Supreme Court ruled election officials can't count invalidated ballots. The ballots were ruled ineligible because of the wrong date on the outer envelope. Democratic majority election boards in Bucks, Montgomery, and Philadelphia counties sought to include those votes. Election officials must finish the recount by November 26th.
Well, Nathan joins us now. He is the editor and publisher of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor. Nathan, welcome to you. So let's start with where Jenna just left off. Do you think the Pennsylvania recount could change the result of the race and turn in the Democrats' favor for Bob Casey, or is this a long shot?
Could, but very unlikely. I expect Dave McCormick to be the next senator from Pennsylvania. Recounts usually do not, thousands of votes are not usually found in recounts, and it would have to be almost an input error of some sort. And it was pretty telling that yesterday in Washington, here in Washington, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer did a press conference where he had Senator Tammy Baldwin, who won re-election, new senators Alyssa Slotkin and Ruben Gallego, and there was someone who was not there, and that was Senator Casey. So I expect McCormick to win.
Yeah. Let's talk about Matt Gaetz, Nathan. The House Ethics Committee met today to talk about releasing its report on the former congressman. Many senators want to see it before considering his nomination. There's also huge public interest here. The Department of Justice chose not to bring charges against Gaetz. Nathan, what do you think is inside that report that, if not criminal, could certainly be embarrassing for Gaetz, and could it sink his nomination?
Well, one of the challenges with that investigation, my understanding is that one of the key people were his friend, who was sentenced to 11 years in prison for on similar charges, and he is not a credible person to maybe help this prosecution move forward. I think with the report, it's reasonable that the committee not continue to investigate someone who is no longer a member of Congress, but I think that's different than asking the committee to release a report that already exists and already talks. It seems reasonable to have that come out because of the high stakes of the Attorney General job. And the question for the Trump administration is, do they want to try to push him through the formal Senate confirmation process, or are they going to try to do an end around and use an arcane rule to try to work with the House of Representatives to push the Senate into adjournment and to do these recess appointments? That's really the question.
Nathan, today House Speaker Mike Johnson instituted a transgender bathroom policy stating single-sex facilities are based on biological sex. It comes in response to the first transgender member of Congress, that's Delaware Representative-elect Sarah McBride. Nathan, it looks like we're seeing the campaign trail literally come to Congress.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, this is a real world application to something that we've seen theoretical discussions taking place in campaign ads, and this is a practical application of that. It's interesting to watch. It's not a surprise how South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace or Republicans have reacted. It's been interesting to see how McBride has reacted, and her response was, I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. I'm here to fight for the people of Delaware and the people that she was elected for. So it will be fascinating to watch this moving forward.
All right, Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor. Nathan, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan. Well, in other news, a judge handed down a life sentence in a case that sparked national debate over immigration. Jose Ibarra received life in prison without parole for the murder of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley. The 22-year-old was on a run in February when authorities say Ibarra, an illegal immigrant, assaulted and killed Riley with the intent to rape her. Well, in other news, the Biden administration is shifting its policy on military weapons, now allowing Ukraine to use anti-personnel landmines.
Yeah, the U.S. supplied devices will be used to help slow advancing Russian ground troops.
They don't lead with their mechanized forces anymore. They lead with dismounted forces who are able to close and do things to kind of pave the way for mechanized forces. So that's what the Ukrainians are seeing right now. And they have a need for things that can help slow down that effort on the part of the Russians.
The move comes on the heels of the Biden administration allowing Ukraine to use American long-range missiles against Russia. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv shut down today after receiving a warning of a potential airstrike. The embassy told employees and U.S. citizens to take shelter. Ukraine officially launched one of those long-range missiles into Russian territory. It struck a weapons warehouse in the Bryansk region.
Well, just over 1,000 days of war, new polling shows a majority of Ukrainians are ready to make sacrifices for the sake of peace. According to Gallup, 52% say Kyiv should be open to territorial concessions in order to stop Russia's invasion. That is a dramatic shift from just 2 years ago, when only 22% said the Ukrainian government should negotiate with the Kremlin to end the war. Coming up, the Biden administration grilled over its refugee policy. What one organization is doing to help families fleeing persecution. Right after this.
Welcome back. President Biden's Health and Human Services Secretary in the hot seat. Today, House Republicans question Javier Becerra about how the department has dealt with unaccompanied minors who have entered the U.S. illegally. Republicans accuse the Office of Refugee Resettlement of losing track of roughly 150,000 children, leaving them vulnerable to gangs and drug traffickers. Becerra defended his department's actions.
The challenge for these unaccompanied children is immense. We have worked tirelessly over the past 46 months to build a sustainable network of trained and licensed caregivers who can meet this challenge.
Well, joining us now is Chelsea Sobolik, Director of Government Relations at World Relief. Chelsea, welcome. So you're probably familiar with the claims of 300,000 lost migrant kids. ICE and immigration experts say that figure lacks key context and acknowledge, though, improvements should be made. Chelsea, based on the work of Open Doors, what concerns do you have about unaccompanied children caught up in the immigration system?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on today. And, here at World Relief, our mission is to put the heart of the local church, both in our work domestically and around the world. And as Christians, we believe that every single person matters, including the most vulnerable, which are children. So, I was listening to that hearing, and I think one of the things that I can say is World Relief, Christians, the church, the government should care for and protect every single child here in the U.S., no matter how they got here. And, one of the interesting things is the Office of Refugee Resettlement is housed under the Health and Human Services Department, which is tasked with providing human services. It's also tasked with helping resettle refugees who come into the U.S. And there's a lot of talk, even today, about immigrants, about our U.S.-Mexico border. I think what's really important for people to understand is that refugees are here legally. They come to the U.S. at the invitation of the U.S. government after about 10 10, 20 years of vetting in a third-party country. So, we are very concerned and care deeply because, number one, we're Christians, and the Bible instructs us to care deeply for every single image bearer, especially children. But I think number two, we are World Relief is one of the refugee resettlement organizations, and so we do help resettle people around the world, such as persecuted Christians. We did a report with Open Doors earlier this year that saw a pretty big increase in persecuted Christians that were resettled. So we care about children here. We care about people fleeing violence and persecution. So, and all of that is rooted and motivated in our faith.
Yeah, Chelsea, the report notes concern with the Biden administration overdue process for people seeking asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border because of religious persecution. And President-elect Trump has threatened to suspend the refugee resettlement program on day one. What's the message you're hoping to get across specifically for Christians, Chelsea?
Yeah, I think I'd say two things. Number one, the number of people displaced around the world is at an all-time recorded high. It's about 120 million people. Simultaneously, the number of Christians around the world who are being persecuted because of their faith has also risen. It's about 1 in 7 Christians globally who are persecuted for their faith. Certainly not every persecuted Christian flees their home, and not every displaced person is persecuted because of their religion, but the numbers are certainly related. You're right. President-elect Trump has, in speeches and on social media posts, promised to pause refugee resettlement. He has also said he wants more legal immigration on his watch. And he has said he wants to be a defender of persecuted Christians. And so we would just urge him that the U.S. refugee resettlement tool is one of the tools the U.S. government has to offer protection and safe haven to persecuted Christians.
All right, Chelsea, I wish we had more time, but we're out. Chelsea Sobolik with World Relief. Chelsea, thank you so much. It's great to have you this evening.
Thanks, Chelsea.
And up next, a war from within, the internal forces threatening to bring down the Iranian regime, when Faith Nation returns.
Welcome back. The United States believes it's getting closer to a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah.
American envoy Amos Hochstein is heading to Jerusalem after making additional progress during talks in Beirut. Hezbollah's leader announced he supports a truce. Israel says any deal must permit the IDF to strike the terror group if needed.
We will need to keep the freedom of to act if there will be violations.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration vetoed a UN resolution today demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. The U.S. blasted the measure because it did not condition a truce on the immediate release of more than 100 hostages. Washington accused Security Council members of rejecting a compromise.
Israel is warning Iran of devastating consequences if it attempts any further attacks on the Jewish state. Yet the regime in Tehran faces a potentially greater threat, this one from within. Multiple opposition groups exist within Iran's borders, and analysts are calling for the West to support their struggle for freedom. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Recently, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke directly to the Iranian people.
Yet there is one thing Khamenei's regime fears more than Israel. You know what it is? It's you, the people of Iran. That's why they spend so much time and money trying to crush your hopes and curb your dreams.
Iranian-American filmmaker Houman Halili is fueling those dreams through 18 banners posted throughout Israel, celebrating those women defying the regime.
I wanted to inspire the women of Iran to keep fighting because what they're doing takes so much courage to show their hair. And when someone gets murdered, I don't want them to be forgotten.
One school of thought is that the Islamic regime could potentially collapse without a war. One believer is Yigal Karman, founder of the Middle East Media Research Institute, or MEMRI. For more than 25 years, Karman, a former IDF intelligence officer, has helped bridge the language gap between East and West by translating multiple languages in the region through MEMRI.
No one wants war. No American President Trump will not want war. No one, we don't want anybody. Can it be done without a war? The answer is absolutely yes.
Karman explains part of that is due to Iran's multi-ethnic population.
Iran is made up of 50% almost Parsis. The other 50% are ethnic minorities which are repressed for many years by the Islamic regime. And they struggle for their freedom, for rights, for autonomy, for confederation. Some want even independence.
Despite that quest for freedom, Karman sees the West doing little to help them.
The West is not helping freedom fighters, true freedom fighters, Baluchis, Ahwazis, Kurds, and Azeris. And there are more, but smaller. These four groups, ethnic groups, seek their freedom, fight for it.
Karman stays in regular contact with many of these leaders.
We are even publishing, giving them a platform, publishing their material. Lately, we published an article by the Dr. Arif al-Ka'bi, who is the leader of the Ahwazis in south of Iran, all the region of the oil. It's a beautiful article, a dream of peace and understanding and of freedom. Freedom of the control of the crazy Ayatollahs. That's the only name for them.
That's why Karman believes the West should get more involved.
They need to be helped. This will remove the Ayatollahs regime like that, if the West helped them.
Any help ending the Iranian regime would transform the Middle East. And that's a dream Netanyahu wants the Iranian people to believe.
I have no doubt that one day in a free Iran, Israelis and Iranians will build together a future of prosperity and peace.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Finally tonight, a big break for a teen with a special gift.
Fresh out of high school, this aspiring sports broadcaster is on his way to the big leagues. Alan Wiley is a sports enthusiast who happens to be blind. After graduating from high school, Alan accepted a scholarship to Rowan University's broadcasting program, which includes producing the official radio broadcast of the Philadelphia 76ers Development League team, the Delaware Bluecoats. Chosen as one of just 4 on-air commentators, and fans are already taking note. Alan is planning to launch his own radio show on the school station called The Blind Truth. I think that has a catchy name.
I love it. Good for him. It's nice to see. That's very inspiring.
Yep. What you set your mind to, you can achieve.
You can do it. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation.
Have a great night. We hope to see you right back here tomorrow.